Welcome, everybody. This is the first annual general meeting of the Veterans and Military Families Caucus, and we are so happy to have you here. I'd rather be in a big union hall somewhere where we could be partying and hugging each other, but we'll start with this and we'll see where we go with it. So I want to start out by thanking everybody for joining us. And I want to start out also talking about, we have door prizes. Has any other virtual event had door prizes? I don't think so. At least I haven't won. And I want to thank Sue Walensky and Diane and Sandy, who are on our comms team, who came up with this brilliant idea. But how's that going to work? So we are monitoring people as they come on board. And the first person who joins us from CD1, CD2, and CD3, the existing CDs, not the new ones, because we still don't really know where they are, is going to get a door prize. And we will show you what those look like in just a minute. The other thing we're going to do is go over some rules of engagement. So because we hope to have several people from our caucus joining us, we ask everybody to please mute themselves. And we'd like you to put your comments and any questions in the chat. And we've got Taurus Leba, our secretary, and Sandy Stuhlberg, our design and graphics guru and the communications team, who are going to be monitoring the chat, and they will ask all of those questions when we get to the Q&A period. And the third thing I want to talk about is that we are going to start out with an invocation from our chaplain. So let me go over the door prize process first. We have 5 more door prizes besides the first people who join. So one of them is going to be, who is the oldest veteran that's joining us today? So to answer that, you're going to have, no, sorry, it's not going to be you, Shannon. You have to go into the chat and there will be a link for a Google form. And this is for all of the questions. As soon as we ask the questions, click on that link and you're going to enter the information that it asks for. Really easy. Your name, your email, and the answer to the question. So for the oldest veteran, the youngest veteran, just put your birthdays in there. And Sandy and Torres are going to sort that out. So the oldest and the youngest will also get a door prize. And then in our agenda, we're going to have door prize questions being asked throughout. So at about 12:15, Diane Guterud's going to ask the first question. And then she's going to invite you to go into the chat, click on the Google form link, put your information in there, hit submit. That's it. That's as simple as it is. And then Sue will talk about how we're going to award those prizes a little later in our meeting today. So we've started the recording. We're ready to go. I would now like to introduce Jeff Swanson, who is a veteran who served both in the Marine Corps and the Air Force for over 30 years. And he is a very active Democrat down in the South in CD2. And he's a very good friend. So Jeff, take it away, sir.
Okay, respecting the reality that we have many faith traditions in our veterans and family members, and some, people, ascribe to a specific church or religious organization, and some, do not. Their spirituality is, maybe very private to them or expressed in, other ways. But I thought what we could do is all be thankful. That's what unites us all. People serve in the military because they're grateful for our nation. They're grateful for security. They're grateful for the work that the veterans and military people do, and their family members support them in humanitarian ways. And that is really going to come in big here, as we face this tremendous crisis in Ukraine. But I thought what we could do is just all of us, I would say the first word, which is thank you. And then I could say, after a few moments of silence, and we could all express ourselves, our gratitude in our own way, and in silence. And then I could say, Lord, hear our prayer. And everybody could say the word amen, which means so be it. So, well, great cosmic energy. We are thankful for our veterans, our family members, and especially all of those who have gone before us this year and left this life and now reside with you in eternity. And so thank you, and hear us as we lift up our petitions and concerns in the silence of our hearts. Lord, in your mercy, amen. Amen and amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Chaplain. So I would now like to start out with some remarks and kind of go over the agenda of a year in review for this wonderful caucus that I've had the honor of being a chair of for a year and about 2 months. So Ivan, would you please put up our PowerPoint? So everyone, welcome again. This is our first ever annual all hands general meeting. We're doing it by Zoom, obviously, for health and safety concerns, but we are a statewide organization. So this is probably going to be the venue that we would use for most all hands meetings. I want to spend about the next 10 minutes presenting what is essentially a year in review for our caucus. And all of this reflects the amazing talent and hard work of our team. I am so honored to be here and to be able to share it with everyone. Next slide. This is our mission. Our mission sets our course. We derive goals and then courses of action that we will embark upon to accomplish these goals and accomplish our mission. And we get there through education, encouragement, advocacy, building relationships, and above all, collaboration. We communicate internally with our members and externally with kindred organizations. Next. So this is the agenda. This is what we have done this year. I'm going to talk about membership, advocacy, a brand new initiative that we started about 6 months ago, the Veteran Treatment Courts expansion, candidate development, candidate forums, collaboration, our guest speaker series, newsletters, and our website, and finish up with outreach. Next slide, please. So this is who we are. We are 382 veterans, family members, and associate members. And just this past year, we changed our bylaws to extend our membership opportunities to those who have not served and who have not have a family member serve, yet care very deeply about veterans and helping them. These associate members are welcome, and they hold the same status as all our other members, except for voting in our elections. Our dues are $30 a year. We're an all-volunteer force, and based on the ability, and people are asked to donate based on their ability and their desire to contribute. Our money is used for outreach. We certainly couldn't afford salaries to any of the talent that we have on board. Next, advocacy for veterans. We advocate for bills that improve the quality of life for veterans and our families, and we fight against bills that won't. We do this primarily at the state level, but now we're looking to join forces to advocate at the national level. And one of the topics we're going to talk about today, you will hear, is both state and national level. Many of the bills that we support will make New Mexico a more attractive destination for service members and their families, especially those who are transitioning to the civilian workforce, and for retirees looking for an enchanting place to enjoy the great outdoors. Both groups bring a strong work ethic, knowledge, technical skills, and their families with them, which strengthens both our workforce and our economy. Our legislative report card was sent to all 112 New Mexico legislators. And in it, we thank them for supporting us, and we call out those who don't. We believe in accountability, and we want them to know that we're watching, and we really want them to work with us. We're striving to bring more of them on board each year. Here are some of the categories of our legislators. We have heroes. They sponsored bills. And guess what? All of them were Democrats, and we had one decline to state. And our champions, who voted 100% of the time, to support and pass our priority bills. Guess what? Again, all Democrats. And then we call out those who are AWOL, legislators who are not there for us, all Republicans. I want to acknowledge our Committee for Veterans Advocacy for their strategizing, their work with legislators, testimony, and vigilance in watching every community meeting hearing that heard one of our priority bills. And a special shout out to both Dorothy Seaton and Joan Dickerson, who led this effort and produced this amazing legislative report card. It's on our website. I encourage any of you who have not looked at it to take a look at it. And we are going to work with and support legislators during the interim session to prepare for the next year. Next. This is our new initiative, Veterans Court. Specialty courts exist in many states, and they have a proven track record of success. A key reason for their success is the mentorship of veterans who are in trouble by other veterans who volunteer to assist them. Veterans often trust veterans more than other people because our years of serving together as a team and looking out for each other. And a key measure of effectiveness of these courts is reduced recidivism. So let me talk to you about that for a minute. We want to keep vets out of jail, but we want to keep them from returning. And the recidivism rate within 1 year for veterans who were in trouble and went through the Veterans Court specialty court system, recidivism rate is only 17% within the first year. It sounds high, but listen to this. New Mexico recidivism in general is 49%. Almost half of the people that serve their time and are released end up right back in jail. And the US recidivism rate in general is 44%. So you can see how effective these veterans courts are. We are currently working with 5 judicial districts who want to stand up a new veterans court. You see that we have 3 existing right now, one in Alamogordo, one in Las Cruces, and one in Albuquerque. And we work with these judicial district members to help them identify needed resources among court staff and establish business practices with other judicial partners, such as the local DA and the public defender's offices. Our VCI team is also facilitating research into veteran populations and distribution within our court system and state to help determine where these resources should be placed for the most value. Next. Candidate outreach and support. We encourage veterans and military family members to run for office. Representation matters. We engage with and support candidates who are strong advocates for VMF priority issues. Veterans and our families understand our unique issues, and they become subject matter experts to help their colleagues who are also serving. They're valuable resources. We encourage elected officials to speak out and about veterans and become familiar with our issues. We are striving to bring more veterans into the Democratic Party of New Mexico. Next. Next slide, please. Okay, collaboration. So we want to be part of the larger team within the Democratic Party of New Mexico. We think that caucuses working together are a force multiplier for our state party, and so many of our constituents overlap. Think about how many veterans are in the rural communities. 51% in New Mexico, in fact, and Native Americans serve in the military at a higher rate than most other groups. And so many veterans in New Mexico are Hispanics. These are all caucuses we can work together. We've been working with the Rural Caucus, the Democratic Party of Bernalillo County, Blue CD2 New Mexico, and we're planning to collaborate with the Labor, Native American, Black, and the new Fuerzas Unidas caucuses and any other caucuses in reaching out to county chairs of the Democratic Party. We want to collaborate. Please reach out to us if you want to join us in an event. Next slide. Communications. You know, you can do wonderful things, and if people don't know about it, it doesn't make as much of a difference. So, communications is essential, and we strive for steady, two-way dialogues to shape and guide our future activity. Anyone can subscribe to our free email. It comes out every month. No caucus membership is required. Our website is easily accessible to everyone, and our communications and webmaster, Ivan, are the absolute best, as I think you will see throughout today's meeting. We call through the membership database at least once a year to check on people, invite them to the events, and solicit feedback on how we are doing and look for new ideas on new initiatives. And we send 2 old-fashioned USPS letters a year out to our members because some of them are not online. We actually have a World War II veteran, 98 years old, and she doesn't spend a lot of time online. So we want to make sure that she knows we are here for her. We want to let her know what we're doing, and we are advocating on their behalf, and we solicit their input. Next slide. And I want to close by thanking everybody. I really appreciate you for joining us. This is just the business end of this. We've got an exciting roundup of speakers. I want to thank our amazing volunteers because they make this happen. I want to thank our executive committee for their leadership and guidance. I want to thank our members who support, donate, participate, and inspire us. And I want to thank all the New Mexico legislators who sponsor and vote 100% to pass our bills, and our fellow caucuses and other collaborators who strengthen our voice, and our guest speakers who inform, educate, and motivate. So thank you, everybody. And speaking of guest speakers, let's get this show on the road. I'd like to invite Commissioner Shannon Reynolds from Doña Ana County. He is also one of our CD2 vice chairs to introduce our first guest speaker. Over to you, sir.
Claudia, thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you for your leadership as well. I think you made a real difference for us in this caucus. Yeah, I'm honored. I mean, we have a lot of great speakers, but I'm honored to be able to present and introduce the first speaker. Cabinet Secretary Sonia Smith is a U.S. Air Force veteran and a healthcare professional. In the Gulf War, she served as a medical technician in operations in Desert Shield and Desert Storm. Now, as a cabinet secretary for our governor, she is working as an advocate for veterans across New Mexico. We are honored to welcome Secretary Smith and look forward to what she has to say. With that, I give you Secretary Smith.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Shannon, for such a wonderful introduction and warm welcome. I want to thank Claudia for the opportunity to speak every time I'm invited to come. I feel like I'm coming home because you all are so welcoming, and we are all like-minded because of our service or because we know someone who has served, because as veterans, we know we don't serve alone. We have tremendous support systems. So thank you so much. I also want to recognize our elected officials. I know there are several here, and I don't want to get in trouble, so I'm just going to say hello to everybody. How to cover the bases in that regard. But what I want to do is also remind everybody here that here in New Mexico, every day is Veterans Day. That is something that I adopted when I was first appointed to this position, and I make it a point to say it every time I have an opportunity to speak in front of anybody, to remind people of the great opportunity that we have in serving our veterans. So here, every day is Veterans Day. So I'm going to share some slides. I know there are some questions and concerns about the proposals of the closings of the CBOCs. So I think I'd like to spend a few moments talking about that. And I did practice this, so let me find it. There it is. Can everybody see that? Okay, all right.
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Okay, thank you so very much. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I do think it's important for us to have a robust conversation, and I do know that our congressional members are going to have some comments as well. So let's start with this. We know that last year there was, Congress gave the okay for the establishment of this commission called the AIR Commission, the Asset and Infrastructure Commission. And this year, the Secretary of the VA submitted recommendations. These recommendations were based on listening sessions and data collected from 2015 to about 2019 from all of the vision areas here. And you can see that we are Vision 22. We also have a little bit of an encroachment from Vision 17, and we go over a little bit into Colorado. So it's important for you to understand the area that we're talking about here. So let's move on. Here is a snapshot of what we look like today. According to the VA, in fiscal year 2019, we had a little more than 69,000 veterans enrolled with the VA Medical Center. They're saying that based on projections through fiscal year 29, we're going to have a decrease of almost 4%. That is something that we really need to have another conversation about, because we don't want any veteran leaving New Mexico for whatever reason. So I'd like to actually come back, Claudia, to talk about some of the things that DVS is talking about in that regard to keep veterans here in the state. One of the things that we know, and I want to give a shout out to Senator Pope, I'm not sure if he's on, but he did advocate for having veterans' retiree salary waived. And I believe it starts next year with $10,000, $20,000, and $30,000. He might be able to talk a little bit more about it, but I do know that he was instrumental in getting that passed. And that's huge, because that was one of the things that was brought to my attention right after I was appointed, that this had been an ongoing concern of how we keep veterans here in the state. So we hope that that will help us here in that regard. But also, too, we know that we have a rural state. Approximately 46% of our veterans who are enrolled live in rural areas. And I'm going to say that that's probably a little bit more. Again, but this is based on data from 2019. And you can also see how they're saying enrollees are close to receiving primary care. They're about 30 minutes away and about 60 minutes away. Okay, all right, so let's jump down to the proposals of the CBOCs. Again, this is based on 2019 data. They want to first expand the CBOC that is in Rio Rancho to make it into this super CBOC. So that means that enrollment will increase. The concerns that we have are the 4 CBOCs that are being proposed to close. And I want to make sure I keep saying that word proposed, because nothing is final yet in this regard. We have a strong opportunity to advocate against this. And I believe that there have been several conversations already. I've been included in several to make sure that our voices are heard. So let's start with the Gallup CBOC. They're saying that the rationale to close this is because of enrollment is expected to decrease. So what they're proposing is a collaboration with the Gallup Indian Medical Center and also a special agreement with the Navajo Nation. And for veterans who are non-Native veterans, they are proposed to be seen by local providers. And then you go down to Las Vegas. They want to, again, because of the projected decrease, they want to have veterans be seen by local providers. Same thing for Raton and the same thing for Espanola. Now, we know that a lot has happened since 2019, namely the pandemic. We know that providers are hard to come by in any sense, especially in these rural areas. So what we've done is I've worked with Dr. Scrace with Health and Human Services and the Department of Health, and we've put together a letter to go to this Air Commission with the rationale of this is not going to work here in New Mexico. So I hope that is making some sense here. There is very great concern that for an already stressed and strained healthcare system, that we will put that, we will have our veterans seen by local providers that may or may not be there. So we are working as intra-agencies to make sure that we get that message across. Here are some other concerns that I don't think is getting enough attention, and I have this here in red. This proposal is also including a move of PTSD services from here to Anthem VA Medical Center in Phoenix, Arizona. This VA Medical Center has not been built yet, but we know that that is catastrophic for us here. I believe it's about 6 hours away, not to mention the family support systems that our veterans need to have and how that is going to impact them when they're not able to get care here. So while we're having conversations about the closures of the CBOC, we also need to know that PTSD services are also proposed to leave our area. Another concern is that women veterans are increasing. So they're saying by fiscal year 2029 that we are going to increase by almost 27.5%. We know that the modernization that they're proposing for the VA Medical Center looks good on paper, but we think we need a little deeper dive into what they are considering, what our needs are. So while this may look like something good for us, again, on paper, we need to get more information. So this is going to be my last slide. What I'm trying to show you here is now what this looks like as far as a process and a continuum. This Air Commission, as far as I know it, and maybe our congressional members will have better information when they speak, but I do not believe that this Air Commission has been fully appointed yet. If it has, I have been asking and have not gotten that information. It's my understanding that it will be a bipartisan commission, presidentially appointed and congressionally approved. So again, hopefully they have some better information than I do, but this Air Commission, to the best of my knowledge, has not been approved. So you see here that the VA recommendations were given to this body on the 14th of March. So what's supposed to happen between now and January of next year is this Air Commission is supposed to conduct public hearings. Now, while we appreciate that, we know that we can't wait around for these hearings to take place. So DVS has put together some dates, and we will make sure that we broadcast those out soon, where we can have veterans come and share their concerns. And I'm hopeful that our congressional leaders will do the same. I believe one has already done one in Espanola, Congresswoman Teresa Fernandez-Ledger. Fernandez-Ledger has already done one, and I'm sure she'll be doing some others as well. So again, when you look at what the next steps are, these recommendations in January of next year, after these public hearings and everything that's supposed to take place, are to go to the president. Now, the president at that juncture has the opportunity to submit the recommendations to Congress or not. Again, this is a process. Nothing has been finalized yet. If he does decide to give these recommendations to Congress, Congress can either accept them as a whole and have no inaction at all. They can decide not to do anything, or they can reject them as a whole by passing a joint resolution of disapproval. Now, I've gotten all of this information directly from the VA's submission and explanations of what are supposed to happen next. So you are more than welcome to go and verify what I'm saying here. You can find the information on the VA's recommendations to the Air Commission. So if that happens, then the commission reviews the analysis in March of next year. And then by March 30th of next year, the approvals will have to be submitted to Congress. And if this passes Congress, then the VA has approximately 3 years to start implementing these recommendations. So what they're saying is that even though these recommendations are being discussed now, they may not be realized until 10 to 20 years from now. So I'm going to stop sharing, if that's okay, and pause, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have, because I know I've said a lot. So, but again, what I wanted to do was give you a big picture of what we're dealing with now and what's to come, but also to remind us that we are here to advocate and that nothing is final yet. And we have an opportunity to turn this around. So thank you, Claudia. I'm ready for questions.
Thank you so much, Secretary Smith. What we would like to do is we're going to, we've got a couple more things, and then we're going to invite both of our congresswomen to be guest speakers, because we want them to address this as well
Yes.
as whatever else they want to talk about. And then we're going to have all the Q&A probably after that.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. And thank you so much. That's a wonderful brief. And I want to comment on it just real briefly. You're going to have a commander's call, I hear, on the 30th.
Yes. Thank you so
Tell us
very much
about
for
that.
It is in my notes here. Yes, on Thursday, we'll be doing our commander's call at the VA Memorial in Albuquerque at 9 o'clock. More information will be coming out on that. I believe it was in our latest newsletter as well. And I will be going over this again and again, standing for questions for what I know and what it is, and share what it is that we're doing as an agency. Thank you.
Okay, terrific. And would you put maybe a link to your newsletter in our chat so that people who aren't reading that regularly have access to it? The other thing I forgot, we've got 2 more door prizes that I'm going to announce questions for. The youngest veteran on board today and the oldest veteran on board today. And we're doing this because Jeff Swanson is a Marine, and this is a real tradition from the U.S. Marine Corps. Rick and I have served many years overseas, and we always go to the Marine Corps birthdays because they're so much fun, but they honor the youngest and the oldest when they celebrate the anniversary of the creation of the Marine Corps. And I just love that tradition. So if you go into the chat, Sandy has put a link there, click on it, and it'll probably ask for your name, your email, and your birth date. And we will determine who's the youngest and oldest and talk about those winners at the end of our Q&A. So with that, I'd like to introduce Taurus Leba, who has done a spectacular job as our secretary. Taurus has got a fabulous background in politics. And Taurus, if you would just give us a few sentences on what you've done in the past, and then take it away, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like very much, first of all, to thank Secretary Smith for her comments. You're highly informative, and your educational message to us today was fantastic, and your service to our state and our veterans community is truly invaluable, and I did want to thank you for that. For those of you who are new to the group, my name is Taurus Leba. I currently serve as secretary for the caucus. I'm very proud to do that as a family member through the caucus. My father served in Korea during the conflict then. I'm very proud of his service, and I'm very proud of the people that I serve here on the caucus. I was never chosen for the militaries, and so I wanted to go speak about a few things. My service is basically through politics and service to others. And so through that, I've had the opportunity to work through several agencies. I've worked in Washington, Santa Fe, and at the local level for the DNC. I have had the pleasure of working for 2 American presidents and 2 New Mexico governors, as well as with a variety, almost 30 years of some of the best political candidates I can even think of, and some of them are on this call right now. And I want to thank you, and I want to say hello to all of you and wish you well in 2022. And so with that in hindsight, I just want to bring this service to the caucus, and I've been here for a little under a year, and I'm very eager and thankful to be serving you all. So with that in mind, the best way I can do that, other than doing all of this, is to give away a door prize. And I do have one particular question that's been eating at me. So all of you get your thinking caps on, and no fair, you guys that are electeds already, because you probably already know this, but I'm going to ask this and I'm going to repeat it. I'd like to know how many veterans are currently serving as members of the New Mexico State Legislature. So that's currently. So how many veterans are currently serving as members of the New Mexico State Legislature? Remember, there'll be a link for the form in the chat. It just popped. Go ahead and fill that out as quick as you can, and then we'll be announcing the results in just a few moments. All right, thanks so much for your service. Thank you so much for having us on as part of the call. And Madam Chair, I turn it back over to you respectfully. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Torres. And Torres, we're going to have all the winners announced after the Q&A. And I'd like to now introduce Diane Guterud. She is the Vice Chair of Communications. She's a very active Democrat. Diane, please tell us a little bit about yourself, and then please ask your question, ma'am.
Well, I'm a family associate, and my father served in Korea, and most of my relatives and my cousins have served in Vietnam. And like all of the wonderful people that I've met through the caucus, especially the reason why I'm doing this is because of my respect for Claudia and all of her work. And every time I meet another veteran in the executive committee, I'm even more impressed. And it reminds me of all the great community leaders and teachers and coaches and wonderful people who have served, like my relatives. And this is just my way of honoring them. And I moved here about 5 years ago, and I've always been in admiration. My whole career was completely different, but I've always been in great admiration of those who serve and those who also give back to their community, and that's what I intend to do. So my question, I think we're going to put it up for the next door prize, is what day each month does the caucus guest speaker series take place? Again, we have a speaker series each month, and we do it on a certain day. Which day is that?
Thank you, Diane. Okay, so everybody, you should be looking at the chat. Go ahead and click on that Google link. Put your name, your email, and the answer to Diane's question in. And the first person who answers it correctly will win. And we'll talk about it after the Q&A. All right, so next, I would like to introduce Jerry Warner. She is a veteran. She's married to a veteran. Her kids are serving. Jerry is just all over this, and she's a fabulous CD3 representative. She's our vice chair there, along with Senator Harold Pope. Jerry, over to you, ma'am.
Teresa Ledger Fernandez is a military family member and has spent her career as an attorney specializing in community building and tribal advocacy. Her firm fought for community development, civil rights, and social justice. In DC, she serves on the House Committee on Natural Resources, the House Committee on Education and Labor, and the Committee on House Administration.
Communications. And on the House Administration, we put in Elections Committee.
She conducts extensive outreach to veterans in her large district, which includes all 4 of the VA clinics that are being recommended for closure by the VA Air Commission. We are so proud of our representative, Teresa, all across the whole state of New Mexico, but especially across CD3. And we are honored to welcome her today.
Thank you so much, Jerry. And thank every veteran that's on this call. I loved hearing about the fact that we have such a overrepresentation of our members, our constituents in New Mexico as veterans because of the fact that our family members step up to serve. I have my dad's flag that was presented to me at the at the cemetery with his, and I look at it and I keep it there because it helps me remember why I'm here and what I have to do. I really want to thank Claudia. You are an amazing leader here with the idea of door prizes. When what are they? They're screen prizes, right? Secretary Smith, thank you for your very, very detailed explanation of what's going on. The Veterans Caucus Chair, Taryn Sims, muchísimas gracias as well. And I'm so pleased to see so many of our elected and those who want to get elected on the screen today. My hermana, Representative Stansbury, I see her intently participating and learning along with me and all of us. So, we've done a lot. It's in the last 15 months, what we have done for veterans, I think is significant. There's a huge change, sea change of how Congress is approaching this and how the president is approaching this. And I often summarize the work we've done. The infrastructure bill has money in there. The omnibus bill has an increase that we haven't seen for all the important needed services. So whether they're services for our women veterans, behavioral health, issues. It's just great, but I don't want to talk about all of that work. What I really do want to talk about is the Air Commission, because that's, I think, the most important task on hand right now. And as the secretary noted, we have time, but we want to use that time and make sure that everybody is aware of what's happening. So that's why I've done the press releases. I've asked people to send out to their own network the letter that I sent, and the delegation has sent letters to the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, raising our concerns and raising our questions. And some of those questions include the fact that they want to close all of my district because I have a rural district. We saw those numbers that the secretary put up. Most of our veterans in New Mexico are in rural districts. And my point is that we can't just say, thank you for your service to veterans. We need to say thank you for your service, and we are going to provide you with the services that you have earned and that you deserve, and that veterans need to be able to receive their services wherever they live. When that promise was made, when that pact was made with our veterans, it wasn't as long as you live in Albuquerque, as long as you live in Santa Fe, as long as you live in a metropolitan center where it's easy to serve you. We need to make sure that we serve our veterans wherever they live on all of the areas, whether it's, health clinics, or even being able to have the ceremonies and have the honors that are appropriate when we lay you to rest. I've heard all of that. I started meeting with my veterans in the rural areas even before the letter came out, when I was very pleased because then I had that information that we could put in the letter. And I am especially concerned because the rationales that they put for each of the reason for closing simply are not logical when you know these communities. For example, in Española, and we'll put in the link to the newspaper, I think Kira already put it, our article. I was very pleased that the paper asked if they could tag along. We asked the veterans before we said yes. I had a session with the Española veterans at the VFW. It was hard, right? But it was also wonderful to be there. And we heard that it's not just the distance, it's also what kind of care you're going to get. Because to say that you can get the care in the community, which is what they say, doesn't mean you're going to get the care in a clinic that knows the unique issues that veterans face. They face unique health issues that the doctor in Española understands. He's a veteran himself. I looked at that number, that they put up in the recommendation list. And it is not consistent with the number of visits to that health clinic from the veterans. There are 2,200 visits to the clinic from veterans in Española. And they put a much lower number. And the thing is, we actually had El Centro there was a veteran who she works at El Centro. And so she remembers the days before they stood up the clinic, the veteran clinic in Española. And she says, we could not give them the attention they needed. They had to wait a long time to be served. And we were dealing with pregnant women with, all the range of services that we provide. And we were not able to give them the specialized service they need. And the veterans themselves said that. They said, when we go there, there are crying babies everywhere. We don't feel like we're in a space that recognizes and acknowledges us. And that's the same thing that the doctor said when I went to this clinic. The Española veterans love their clinic. And the doctor said, I love this phrase. He said, yeah, maybe they'll be able to get care in the community, but don't veterans deserve more? And veterans do deserve more. And his eyes actually teared up as he talked about the way that they work with the veterans in that clinic, that they don't give them 15 minutes or 10 minutes, which is what you'd have to do if you're in a private practice. He will spend 50 minutes, an hour with that veteran if that veteran woman or man needs it. You walk into the clinic and it has statements and about service, right? There's beautiful statements about why you served, what you served. It's just, there is more than the distance. There is the specialization. There is the connection with the doctor who knows you. So when you go back in for another visit, he is going to already know. He's not going to look up at notes and say, this is just somebody, I have to give him 50 minutes and serve him. He knows you. So it's that kind of service that they're providing that you don't get. And so those are the kinds of things that I'm going to continue to ask about. I visited Taos. Taos, for example, the Taos veterans are not, they're not proposing to close that clinic. But what Taos is saying is you close Española, you close Raton, you close Las Vegas, some of those vets are going to come to our clinic, and our clinic is already overwhelmed. We have to wait a year to get an appointment, right? So there are all kinds of different issues that we need to make sure that we raise, that we hear them. So in my clinics, we've heard Picuris Pueblo is going to consider a resolution about that. They're going to talk to their veterans. They're going to get the information they need. Española is going to be considering a resolution. Everybody around is going to be considering resolutions. We want those comments to come in. We want them to tell us the stories of what does it mean if this clinic closes for you. And as an example, to say that they're going to get treatment in their community. New Mexico, in my letter, which I think we might have also posted, New Mexico is one of the states that does not have adequate levels of healthcare as is. There are not doctors and health practitioners available in these rural areas to serve our veterans. So you are going to force everybody to have to drive to Santa Fe from Raton when they're sick, right? You're going to have to force them. There was a younger veteran who has kids. He goes, I have to do all of this arrangement to get babysitters, to get care, to get off of work, to go to an appointment that should take an hour, where when I can go in Española, I tell my employer, I've got an hour doctor appointment. I'll be right back. Well, if he has to go to Albuquerque, he has to take the whole day off. So the ramifications are greater than the hours, and we'll be continuing to raise that. So once again, I want everybody to make sure your voices are heard. I want all the veterans that are going to be impacted, and even those that are not impacted, like Claudia, you're doing so much in making sure that we all know about this, that you have the secretary on, that you have me and Representative Stansberry on. so that we can hear from you. Because even if your clinic, if your, if the VA hospital isn't going to be directly impacted, it is, because more people are going to be coming to it. So the VA hospital in Albuquerque is going to be impacted. And we already know that veterans have to wait too long there. So once again, you do deserve more, and we have an obligation to provide it. And we have an obligation at Congress to raise our voices, to listen to your voices, and to oppose that if that's what our veterans want. And that's what I'm hearing for our veterans. So once again, thank you very, very much. One last thing, if anybody sends in comments, right now where I send our comments was to the VA secretary, because the commission is not yet, it's actually not stood up yet. The members have been, I think, appointed, but they have not been approved. So the commission is not yet standing from my knowledge. Send a copy to us so that we know that they've been sent in, so we can also gather those. My fernandez.house.gov is where you would just go on there and send it to us if you send in. But Madam Secretary, you also noted that you thought I would be going. I am going to be going to Raton in Vegas when I come back we're going to be in 2 weeks in DC. I'll be going to Raton in Vegas, and I'll also be going to Gallup. And I'm going to, in each place, go to the clinic itself, something the Veterans Affairs didn't do, which how could you not go and talk to the clinic, right? These
Yes,
are the places
ma'am.
we're serving.
Yes, ma'am. We're going to go to those areas as well, and I'll be glad to share those dates with you.
Perfect. But let's make sure that we are coordinating. And with that, I'll end here so that we can get to our other speakers on this.
Good. Thank you, Representative Ledger Fernandez. It's a pleasure hearing your comments, and thank you for your work on behalf of veterans and military families. Please stay on. There'll be for the Q&A session after Representative Stansbury speaks. And it's my pleasure to introduce or to give you the third question. Oh, by the way, I'm Rick Moody. I'm the CD1 Vice Chair for the caucus. Married to this lovely lady. I'm an Army brat. My mom and dad were both Army. My dad was served in the Korean conflict during the war. And my mom was a Master Sergeant in the Army. They met in Japan in 1951. So my time as a military, family member goes back to my birth. So anyway.
And it'll continue until your death.
Until my death, yes.
All right.
Hopefully not anytime soon. So the third question, this is actually a little bit harder, I think. Name the 4 military bases in New Mexico and the service branch in charge of each. And I'll give you a hint. United States Air Force, United States Army. So there's a link in the chat so you can answer the question. And again, name the 4 military bases in New Mexico and the branch in charge of each one. It's a no-brainer for those who served in one of those services.
We still do need a Navy base here. This
Yeah, we
just
do.
isn't right.
Navy and Marines.
And you are introducing?
I am going to introduce Tiffany Stevens, and she is going to introduce our next guest speaker. Tiffany is Democratic Party of New Mexico, CD1 Vice Chair, and a member of our caucus, and a truly wonderful individual. So,
A wonderful friend.
yep, take it away, Tiffany. And hurry up with those answers.
Thank you so much, Rick. That was a wonderful introduction. Can you guys hear me okay? Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're good.
Well, anyway. So I am very honored this afternoon. Not only am I honored to be a campaign staffer for Captain Claudia Reisner, but I was a former campaign staffer for the fabulous Representative Stansbury during her election. So I am privileged today to introduce Melanie Stansbury. Congresswoman Stansbury has spent her career working to protect our lands and our water and address the critical issues facing our communities. She has been a leader in tackling the pandemic, food and hunger issues, climate change, and growing our economy with meaningful jobs. Now in DC, she serves on the House Committee of Natural Resources and the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. On behalf of the New Mexico Veterans Caucus and family, we are honored to welcome Congresswoman Stansbury, and we all look forward to hearing more of what she has to say.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. And thank you so much, Tiffany, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you to Claudia and to everyone for all of the work that you've done to build out the Veterans Caucus. I'm so excited that you guys are doing this annual statewide event to help connect our veterans across the state. I think it's such important work. I love the work that you're doing to help keep our public officials accountable and to help inform our veterans community about what's happening in our public policy spheres. All of this work is so important for keeping our veterans connected, for making sure that our services and programs are really serving our communities, and that ultimately, at the end of the day, we're caring for New Mexicans. And that's what it's all about. That's what public service is all about. So I'm going to build on some of the comments that have already been made and talk a little bit about our office's engagement on these proposed closures. But before I do that, I also want to give you all just a little bit of an update and an overview of some of the other work that we've been doing on veterans issues and active military issues. But let me first pause and say thank you to all of our veterans and to our active duty military individuals and families for your service and your sacrifice every single day. And I loved what Secretary Smith said, every day is Veterans Day, and we're so grateful for your service. And those of you who are also doing other kinds of service, like doing service within the party and serving our state and other roles. I also want to just take a moment because I haven't had the opportunity to see all of you since the special election happened 10 months ago, and the Veterans Caucus of the Democratic Party played a key role in my election, and we did it, yay! And I want to just say thank you for all of your incredible organizing, all the calls and knocks and organizing and events, and the ways in which you guys showed up to help support my candidacy, to help support our amazing election efforts on the ground, our ground game. I was on the road the last 2 days. We crossed 5 counties and did events in communities of every size across our new congressional district. And, you know, one of the things that I just think is so important to celebrate is that our special election, like the election in the 1st Congressional District, was really a grassroots effort. It was led by New Mexicans like Tiffany and our other campaign staff and other members who are on this call who helped out. And that's how we do it. That's how we win these elections, is by showing up and organizing our communities. So I want to thank you for that. And I'll just note, I was remembering this last night at an event that I was doing, that we actually outperformed the president in our special election by 2 points. And that's the first time that's happened in over 100 years in the United States of America in any congressional election in a special election. And that was made possible by all of your work and activism across our communities. So thank you for that. So since being elected 10 months ago, we've been really, really engaged on coming back into our communities through my congressional office to make sure that we're doing deep listening to our community members, our leaders, to understand what are the most important issues to you. And of course, veterans issues, military issues continue to be one of the top tier issues, in part because so many New Mexicans have dedicated their life to service or are still serving, and because it's such a vital part of our economy and also the ongoing care of our communities. So I've held over 100 different meetings across our communities, town halls, listening sessions, meeting with leaders of all kinds, and co-sponsored over 200 bills during that time. But the thing I wanted to share with you today is that the very first bill that I signed on to after taking office is the I Am Vanessa Guillen Act. And the reason why I signed on to that bill is my very first bill that I sponsored as a member of Congress is because I understand how important addressing the needs of our military and veteran serving individuals is, and also of lifting up women's issues, of addressing violence, and also reforming our military system so that all people can serve safely. And I'm so excited and proud to say that not only did that bill pass, it was integrated into the most progressive NDAA that has ever passed Congress in our country's history. And I think it's worth taking a moment to celebrate that. Not only did we get these sexual assault reforms put into the National Defense Authorization Act, it was the most significant pay raise in active duty military pay that we've seen in a generation. That bill included funding for food security measures, for improvements in the physical upgrades of installations across the world, and significantly, especially for our Madam Chairwoman, it also included massive investments in climate and sustainability and resilience investments in our military installations. So we're really proud about the work that was done in the NDAA this past fall, and we're already starting to prepare for the next NDAA. And so I wanted to put that all on your radar, because we'll be taking recommendations and submissions for how we can integrate things that would benefit New Mexico's military and veteran community. So as you're thinking about federal policies and how to advance those, I wanted you all to be aware of that. In addition to that, our office has been working on a lot of veterans affairs issues. We're currently working on a veterans homeless bill in my office with the Veteran Affairs Committee in the House. And we've signed on to a number of bills around veterans healthcare, mental health services, and homelessness. And, you know, one of the things I also wanted to share is that I think it's so important and powerful to lift up people's stories. Representative Ledger Fernandez brought this up in the context of talking about why it's so important to keep these clinics open, but also because New Mexicans have such extraordinary stories of service. When you think about the number of individuals in whatever conflict or whatever engagement that they may have served, or they may have served in a more civilian-leaning role, you know, our state, the ethos of our communities and who we are is at its core fabric really a service-oriented culture. And it's so integrated with that military service and the stories of people, where they've served, what they've done. We're also working to help lift up those stories through our work and through the opportunities that we have to communicate about that. So please share your stories with us. So now I just want to talk a little bit about the closures, proposed closures of these clinics. Like Representative Ledger Fernandez said, the entire delegation, well, the entire Democratic delegation has been very engaged in making it known that we oppose the closure of these 4 clinics in Gallup, Las Vegas, Español, and Raton. All of those clinics are in communities that are outside of my congressional district. They're in Representative Ledger Fernandez's district. But I want you all to know that our delegation acts as a force of nature together. And so we work together hand in hand. And of course, we have veterans across the entire state of New Mexico that are served by all of these clinics, as well as the main VA clinic in Albuquerque, which is in my district. So we've been communicating with VA leadership, both in Washington, D.C., as well as here in the Albuquerque area and the outlying communities. And, you know, I think Representative Ledger Fernandez really beautifully described how important these clinics are. We do have a shortage in healthcare providers in general for all people, more or less for our veterans population. But I can tell you the number 1, 2, and 3 things that I hear as I'm traveling across our communities is a lack of access to care and a lack of access to housing and resources in our veterans community, especially in rural areas. And I think that the folks who work at the national level really need to understand the context of what it's like here in New Mexico, because it's not all about cost savings and modernization. It's about caring for the people who dedicated their life to service, and by making sure that people have access to care. And for me, that's a personal struggle, a personal fight, because my stepmother worked as a VA nurse her entire career and dedicated her entire life to helping work to bridge the gap between military service and helping people get care when they returned home. And I'll just share with you, actually, her last over a decade of service was at Walter Reed Hospital before it was transferred into kind of another clinical setting, working in their polytrauma unit. working with active duty military who had severe injuries coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq and other theaters, to help transfer both those who were wounded as well as their families to get care back in their home clinics. And I think obviously all of you are veterans and have experienced this. Getting care is just so difficult in navigating these systems. So we cannot afford to lose those clinics, because it is literally the lifeline for some of our rural communities. Because, you know, if you're living in Raton or a small rural community or land grant outside of northeastern New Mexico, or you're living on the reservation out in Dene, Navajo areas, you know, being able to get in a car and travel to Albuquerque, waiting months sometimes to get care, is just not an option. And so we need these clinics to remain open. And our office is going to continue to work with our senators and with Representative Ledger Fernandez to fight to make sure that we keep those clinics open. So as we look forward into the next year, you know, I want you all to know that we're here to serve the community. I'm going to put in the chat, because this is through the Democratic Party, I'm staffed today by Rocky Cordova and Karina Feldman, who are our campaign staff. But John Moore is our Veterans Liaison in my official side office. He was also the Constituent Services Director for Michelle Lujan Grisham and for Deb Holland. So we have an amazing team who continues to do that work. John is doing a ton of work right now to help support getting people's comments submitted for the closures of these clinics. And he also leads up our Constituent Services Office. So if you're somebody who is struggling to get access to care or having trouble with your VA benefits or retirement benefits, John is like a magic worker. So we'll put his contact information in the chat there as a important resource for all of you. And then finally, I know that today is primarily focused on the issue of these clinics and on policy, which I love because I'm a policy nerd and that's what I like to talk about. But none of this is possible without the political work. And at the end of the day, you all are a caucus of the Democratic Party, and I would be remiss if I didn't take an opportunity here this morning to say thank you for all of your political organizing. And I want to just make a comment to say how important your work is, particularly in our rural communities. As we're looking towards the midterm elections in November, we know we're up against one of the most difficult midterms probably in our lifetimes, and most significant in terms of its implications for ensuring that we have, you know, accountability, that we preserve our democratic institutions, that we're able to keep moving ahead with the agenda that our president and this Congress has laid out, and that we can just hold together our fundamental democratic institutions. So we're going to need you all to stay engaged. We're going to need you guys to continue to help organize and engage, particularly in our rural communities. And most importantly, to help communicate the Democrats have the backs of veterans and our active duty military, because we do, we've shown it, and we're there, and we continue to show up. So I want to thank you all for the opportunity to talk this morning. And with that, I'll pass it back. Thank you.
Claudia, you're muted.
2 years. You'd think I'd have this. Actually, Sue Walensky, you are up now, ma'am.
Okay. Greetings, everyone. I am in CD3, and I feel for my brothers and sisters who could be affected by this VA planned announcement. Okay. I am the chair of the Comms Committee, and I just want to tell you, working with Claudia and the whole team on this caucus is the most fulfilling volunteer work I have ever done in my life, because I know I can help change people's lives. Thank you for giving me that opportunity. What I'd like to say now is that some people have already put some questions in the chat room, and we've got track of those. But if you have any questions about Secretary Smith's or Representatives Ledger Fernandez and Stansbury's presentations, or for anyone in the caucus about the good work that we are doing on your behalf, please put your questions to everyone in the chat room, and they are being monitored by Sandy Stolberg and Toro Sleba, and you will have your opportunity to ask them. And the other thing is, the people who are going to be announced as winners of our door prizes, you will be working with me. I'm going to be sending you an email with your prizes, so I just wanted to give you a shout and say hi. Lastly, but not least, I want to thank Representative Stansbury for the tremendous work she's done, both in elected office and prior to that, to improve the quality of life for our people in New Mexico, and for everything you also are doing on behalf of our veterans. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sue. So, Sandy, Torres, do we have any questions in our chat that we could read?
More than one.
We certainly do. Let me just get to those. The first question that we have is posed by Laura Montoya, and she's asking Secretary Sonia Smith if there could be, if the numbers could be skewed much lower because of the pandemic.
Hi, thank you for the question. I think it really is important to point out that this information, again, was collected in 2019. You know, so I don't think there was any effort to go back and collect more data. I think they just ran with what they had, which is problematic because the pandemic has had a tremendous impact. And as it's been said over and over again, that we are a rural state. And if anything, they should have taken from the discussions that were taking place prior to, is that the concerns that I'm sure was raised by the veterans during that time, but with how these potential closures would be. I find it very interesting that while we're talking about making sure that we give our feedback back about how we don't want these closed, let's also take advantage of this opportunity to talk about how we can improve these CBOCs in this area. You know, I know as leaders, you know, we're always ready to listen to concerns, but as leaders, we also know it's important for us to pull out possible solutions too. So I'm sure that as the congresswomen are going across the state listening to veterans and what we're going to do at DVS, yeah, we're definitely going to fight to keep these open. But if this is a true opportunity for asset and infrastructure proposals and recommendations, let's tell them what we want. Let's tell them, give them ideas on how we can fix these things too. We're just not about complaining. Let's take advantage of making sure that we are giving some solid recommendations with this.
Okay, thank you so much. And we've got another question. I just need to toggle back and forth. Sorry about this. It's from Rochelle Williams, and she asks, and I'm not sure who she's asking this of, are there any programs to attract and retain more healthcare providers in New Mexico, particularly in rural areas?
So we are looking at trying to get more rural providers in across America, right? Many of those programs are in our proposed second reconciliation, which was Build Back Better. We have not given up on Build Back Better because it is so important. We anticipate that there will be a skinny bill, and there are several programs in there, pathways to professions, programs that would allow, actually with regards to veterans, that would have more veterans and people who are willing to serve in VA clinics being able to go through the process, have their loans forgiven. New Mexico actually has a great program where they allow students, high school students, to apply for their to get into college, but also then to apply to get into medical school at the same time. And then they would get, if they go back and work in rural areas or areas that need more medical services, we need it, but we don't have enough of it. We need more spots and we need to put more money in there. And so there are, we did increase in the appropriations bill, because we always remember that appropriations bill comes up every year. Right? The ability to try through reconciliation was to try to do major transformative investments. But with the new appropriations that we are finally doing, 2 weeks ago, we passed an appropriations bill that represented our values, because budgets represent values. And we put a lot of good stuff in there. Some of it, amazing stuff, because we prioritized investments in healthcare at the Department of Veterans Affairs, 97.5 billion for veterans medical care, right? Which was an increase of what we've seen before. But this need to build the pipeline, which is what you're getting at, is something that we are looking at hard, and we are not giving up on that need. And if we need to put it in incrementally in next year's appropriations, we're going to do that. But we're also going to continue to push that with a skinny reconciliation bill. Building a better America is how the president is now referring to it as.
And if I could just add on a couple of additional pieces that I think will help to fill out and answer the question and seed some additional ideas. So at the state level, I think that one of the most impactful things we can do is to recruit, train, and get more healthcare providers into our rural and tribal areas. And there was a proposal in front of the state legislature in the 2020 legislative session that was carried by Javier Martinez, and I was one of the co-sponsors, to make medical school and other medical training free in New Mexico. And I will tell you, New Mexico at UNM has one of the best health sciences programs in the United States, and it's not very expensive to make it free. Literally, for, I think it penciled out to something like $8 or $9 million a year, we could make medical school and medical training in New Mexico free. But one of the other things that came up during our listening sessions, especially in some of our rural areas, is it's not just doctors. Obviously, it's nurse practitioners and other kinds of healthcare providers, as well as EMTs, because many of our rural areas, the front line of medical care is really those emergency services and our fire departments and our emergency healthcare providers. So one piece is really kind of building the pipeline in our healthcare providers, and part of that is through education, recruitment, retainment, and also for supporting programs that help to build a culture around that. And New Mexico has a really cool rural and tribal healthcare cohort program where they're trying to create more of a support system for rural healthcare providers who want to go back to rural communities. And just like teachers, if any of you are teachers, we know from the data that you're more likely to stay in practice in a rural area if you're from that area. And so if we can help grow our own and create opportunities in our own rural communities, that's one of the most impactful things we can do. So some of the initiatives that Representative Ledger Fernandez is talking about are the federal grant monies and supports that would help to support that at the federal level. But we have a lot of work to do at the grassroots level to also build out those.
We lost him.
Okay, we may have lost Representative Stansberry, but Secretary Smith, you've got your hand up, ma'am?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a footnote to this wonderful conversation. The VA has the Veterans Rural Health Advisory Committee. One of the things that we can do is make sure that we stay active with them and, if you will, a thorn in their side. We're looking into ways that we can work better with them to make sure that they are addressing truly the needs of rural committees. It is a 15-member advisory committee, and I'm also active with this organization called NAVSDVA. It is they're like the strongest veteran services organization It's a group of state agency heads who run better state agencies. And so what I'm going to propose that we do is certainly work with them to make sure that our voice is concerned, but also lobby to have, if not myself, then certainly someone from from New Mexico be a part of this commission. I think that we have to attack this from all aspects that are available to us. So I am going to investigate that and report back to you on the best path forward with that as well.
Thank you so much. Excuse me. And I think we've got one more question coming into the chat from Mark Pratt. And I just want to point out a comment that Mark made is this discussion seems to only be talking about the top half of the state. Actually, it's going to impact everybody. There's some significant changes that are being made to the Albuquerque Veterans VA Medical Center. And an awful lot of people in the South and from all over go to that. So these 4 clinics certainly have our focused attention, but the rest of it is very important. But Mark, did you have a question that you could please put into the chat and we will ask it for you, sir?
Well, it's just, I think I'd like to just address this also to Sonia Smith. I am on the Veterans Leadership Council for Otero and Lincoln counties. And we are observing some things going on that just don't add up. And one of them is there's a rumor that the VA has bought property in the vicinity of the new Beaumont Hospital, which is in El Paso. I know this is in a different state, but a lot of our veterans also from Alamogordo go to the Las Cruces Clinic simply because we have 3 bases within a 100-mile radius along with 3 major cities, and we do not have a veterans hospital. We have 6 clinics down in El Paso, 6. And when you look at the lines of BSN 17 and 22, it kind of comes up around Alamogordo, and we have to go 225 miles from our city to go to Albuquerque, while El Paso is approximately 85, 90 miles down the road. Okay, and also I want to say we have 3 cities, again, El Paso, Las Cruces, and Alamogordo in a triad, along with 3 bases of Wismar, White Sands Missile Range, Fort Bliss, and Howman also within that triad, yet we don't have any veterans hospital or major medical center. When you look at the maps, it says VA Medical Center in El Paso. That is just a clinic. That is just a clinic, and it's 1 of 6. So I've tried to talk to Ben Ray Lujan about this, and of course we have a congressperson that just is out of tune with most everything here about veterans, regardless of what she says. So, but anyway, what are we going to do about that? We have the major complaint that I hear in the council from all these veteran groups in this vicinity is that our CBOC in Alamogordo is orientated to Albuquerque, 225 miles away, yet we can't be aligned with the Las Cruces Clinic, which is in the Texas BSN. So
Right.
we are pushing that we would like not only to have our clinic, but also someone should look at congressionally, and I'm talking to the 2 representatives, when you look at that line in the BSNs down here, it follows the communication, the FCC's line of which television market we're going in. And I don't know if that was done on a whim or someone said,
Mark?
let's make it easy. But anyway, that's
Mark?
our problem.
Right.
Let
Okay.
me,
I'll toss it up to Sonia.
Okay. All right. Claudia, I think I can try
Mark,
to.
let me please just break in. I'm sorry. We've got a bit of a schedule, and it's a very important question. But I've got two people who need to jump off soon, and they're coming up. So if you don't mind,
Sure.
Mark, hold that thought. And our guest speakers, please hold that thought. And I would now like to turn it over to, first, I want to thank Sandy so much for doing such a great job with the questions. And Torres, despite your internet, I appreciate you helping out. Greg Seeley, he is the strategy behind our Committee for Veterans Advocacy, and I'm so happy to introduce him. He's also a past chair of the caucus, and he is going to announce our winners. So, Ivan, would you please throw up those lovely prizes? And Greg, it's over to you, sir.
Well, thank you so much, Claudia, and thank you for putting together this statewide meeting. I think it's so important that we hear these issues from across our state, and you've built this caucus into such a wonderful group that we can work together with so many people to do this important work, and it's just inspiring to see. So I want to announce our winners of our door prizes. We have a few winners to announce, and what I want to do is start with the first person to join from CD1 is a wonderful friend and ally to the caucus and a champion on the rural caucus. It's our good friend, Evelyn Vinogradov. Thank you, Evelyn. I want to announce our first person to join from CD2. And I'm so sorry, I have to pull up my text messages here. 1 second here, I have it. It is, oh, yes, okay. My apologies. It is Mona Trempe from CD2. Thank you so much, Mona, for joining us today. From CD3, our first person to join, the unbelievable talent who helps us put together so much of what we do on the state legislative side. Truly, truly a great leader and an incredible resource for the caucus. It's the one and only Dorothy Seaton. Thank you, Dorothy, for being here with us today. We just, you do so much for us. Now, I want to go on to a couple of the other ones. So in keeping with the tradition for Marine Corps events that Claudia talked about earlier, today our most senior, our most wise and elder member joining us today is the one and only Bob Carroll. And thank you so much, Bob, for being here today. And thank you for all your work you do with us on the CVA committee. It's really invaluable to have your wisdom. The person who got the question, we're going to go to one of the first questions. The first question was, when is the meeting scheduled for our speaker series, of which this is an offshoot today? And so for our monthly speaker series, the person who got the time and the day right was the unstoppable, amazing talent that is Rocky Cardova. Congratulations, brother. Thank you for being with us today. I want to also go next to our next question, which is what military bases, the 4 major installations do we have in New Mexico, and what branch are they run by? And the first person to answer that question correctly is the just incredible talent and great friend to the caucus, that is Zachary Quintero. Way to go, Zach. Thanks for being with us today, brother, and appreciate all that you do for us. Next up is the number of current legislators we have here in the state of New Mexico. How many veterans do we have serving in our state legislature? And this is a tough question because one of our legislatures has in the past not necessarily been recognized for his service. So this is a tough question to get right. And here's the winner of that question. It is the incredible ally and hard-working friend of our caucus, the one and only Laura Montoya. Thank you so much, Laura, for being with us today and for being with us every time. You're just always there. Thank you so much. And so those are the door prizes that I have to announce today. I just want to thank everybody who's joining us from across the state. And thank you so much to our congresswomen who are fighting hard for us. It is such a there's so much to be proud of in what you're doing and fighting for us. So thank you for joining us today.
I want to jump in for a second here, Greg. We also have a prize to our youngest veteran. Do you know who that is?
Josh Jones.
Josh Jones, buddy.
Yay, Josh.
Congratulations. Oh, that is awesome. Greg, thank you so much. So let me introduce Spike Murphy. He is an Air Force veteran, and he's the vice chair at large of our caucus, and he is going to introduce our next guest speaker. Spike, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Claudia. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
The person I'm about to introduce is the hardest working Democrat west of the Pecos, or east of the Pecos for that matter, or even north or south of the Pecos River. Anyway, a personal friend of mine whom I greatly respect and admire for her dedication to her job, that job being chair of the Democratic Party of the great state of New Mexico. She previously ran for office here in New Mexico and had the best organized campaign I have ever seen. She brings this organizing skill and her enthusiasm as well to her current position as our chair, and it is so very welcome. I was a part of her campaign along with what seemed to be oceans and oceans of volunteers, many of whom had never participated in a political campaign before. Some may not even have voted before. Yet through persuasion, her sincerity, and general goodwill, she brought in an entire generation of young women who are forever motivated to be an active part of our democracy. Their future, the future is theirs, the future is ours because of them and because of her. So, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow veterans, my fellow military family members, and my fellow Americans, it is my pleasure and honor to introduce our party chair, Jessica Velasquez. Take it away.
Thank you all so much for being here today, and thank you, Spike, for such kind words. I have a story for you. You know me, I've always got stories. I was thinking about this on our way into our annual meeting with our veterans. One of my earliest memories of my dad was I was digging into this old cedar chest we had, and I pulled out what seemed to me at age 5, just this like enormous, heavy blue, dark blue, like a night sky in my hands, warm. And it was his pea coat from his days in the Navy during the Vietnam era. And I remember curling up under it and feeling like nothing in the world could touch me at age 5. Now, I wish that story was kind of a footnote to happier memories for my dad's military service career. He was a Vietnam era veteran. He was not very happy about that. Nor was my uncle, who was drafted. My dad enlisted. I'm a member of this caucus proudly because of my experience being raised by Vietnam era veterans. My mother was the breadwinner in the family, and my dad was home with us kids until I was 5 or 6 years old when I started school, which we all recall was a little bit of an anomaly for men to be home raising kids in that era. So the reason I tell this story today is despite my dad's kind of, he had his jaw set about his military service. He was not happy with the US government because he saw so many of his generation get drafted and die in a war that he really didn't believe in himself. He went because he knew it was his duty and it was the right thing to do. Also being raised by a World War II veteran, and I know this story is familiar to many of the folks on this call, right? We have multiple generations of service members in our families. My dad went on to become, thanks to the GI Bill, a high school social studies, civics, and government teacher. And the irony is real. He wanted students, and he especially wanted us, his children, to understand the power of good governance. I remember him taking us to the voting booth when I could barely even reach, back when they still had the curtains. and you actually had to pull the lever to cast your vote. And I see lots of nods. Y'all remember that. Some of you on this call are old enough to remember that. And I am too. And my dad looked down at me, and he was this massive character in my imagination. He looked down at me, he said, "This is the one thing you will always have. The day you turn 18, you promise to me that you will register to vote and you will make your voice heard." And my friends, the reason I'm so honored to be here with this caucus in particular, I cannot think of a group of New Mexicans anywhere in the state who understand exactly what my dad was talking about in that moment. I'm here today to say thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for your leadership now in your role as the Democratic Caucus of New Mexico. New Mexico veterans and military families. Gosh, can you imagine what our party would be like without you? I can't. It gives me nightmares to even think about. We know, my friends, that elections have consequences. We know that leadership matters. Secretary Smith, thank you for being here today. Representative Ledger Fernandez, Representative Stansbury, thank you for being here today. Josh Jones, thank you for running. And I think we had Barbara Jordan here too. Barbara, can we all just give her a round of applause, please?
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
You know what it takes, my friend. I know exactly. And I know Madam Chair Reisner knows exactly what it means to roll up your sleeves and get to work. So thank you for your courage in this. My friends, this is going to be a tough midterm election season. This caucus of all knows the importance of turning out the vote, knows the absolute importance of advocating fiercely for our core values and what we know is right at every level in our government. So my challenge to this caucus consists of nothing more than keep doing what you're doing, registering voters, reaching out to veterans across our state, making sure that we are speaking loudly and clearly and in no uncertain terms about what is good and right and true with Democratic leadership from the governorship on down. My friends, those of you in CD2, Mark Pratt, I'm looking at you. We can do a hell of a lot better in CD2, can't we, my friends? We can do a hell of a lot better. So, Veterans Caucus, we're going to register voters. We're going to make sure that all of your caucus members turn out to vote. When it's time for boots on the ground, who do we call? We call the New Mexico Military Families and Veterans Caucus. Who can get it done better? Nobody that I know, my friends. So we will be here shoulder to shoulder into the fray for one more midterm election season, because we will absolutely reelect these fantastic congresswomen we had on this call. We're going to make sure that Madam Secretary Sonia Smith keeps her job, because we will reelect our governor. And my friends, we're going to do some house cleaning down in CD2. It's time to mop those decks. It's time to rally the forces and get someone into office in our Southern Congressional District who actually takes the time to listen, to engage with veterans and military families, and to deliver the change that we need to improve lives for all New Mexicans. My friends, my name is Jessica Velasquez. I'm so proud to be the chair of your Democratic Party of New Mexico. Thank you all for being here today. My heart is full. Thank you for your service and your continued service in this Democratic Party. Madam Chair, I yield the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And we take your directions. Aye, aye, we are on it. We love having you here. I'd like you to stay, and we're going to pick up with a Q&A session, because all four of our wonderful guest speakers have important answers. And Mark, let's start with your question. And we got about 10 more minutes for this. And then I've got a couple of remarks. I want to respect everybody's time. And I do want to do a call out to Tyrone Sims, who joined us. He's the chair of the Veterans Council of the DNC. Tyrone, thank you so much for joining us today, and all the other candidates and elected officials that we have on board. So let's jump right back to the question. Sandy, over to you, ma'am.
I think that I didn't see any more questions in the chat.
Yeah, I think I can. I remember Mark's questions. I was taking notes.
Okay,
so,
great.
Mark, thank you so much, because you bring up a very valuable point. I did have information in this presentation about the Las Cruces CBOC and the impact that it's going to have with the recommended closure of the El Paso CBOC. There are approximately 6,200 veterans that go to the El Paso CBOC, now they would be going, based on these recommendations, to Las Cruces. So we know that that would put more of a strain. Again, as we go across the state, it is our goal to raise awareness about every impact that these recommendations are going to have for veterans across every corner of this state. I also want to stress again, these are just recommendations. Mark, you have some really great ideas. That's what I mean about solutions. I can talk all day, but you are experiencing, the veterans down there are experiencing what's going on. We need to have your voice. I don't want us just to go in and say, we oppose these closing. I want to use your energy and your recommendations to say, this is how we can make it better for our veterans here in our state. Because that was really the purpose. And that's what the secretary of the VA is saying, that these recommendations are supposed to make it better for veterans. But we know that a one size does not fit all here in New Mexico. So what I'd like to do is really get your information and have a follow-up conversation with you to figure out how we can have more conversation and do what's best for our veterans in that part of the state, if that's okay.
Yes, I only have one other comment that I forgot to mention, is that down at the El Paso at Beaumont, I've seen dozens, and I mean dozens of license plates from Chihuahua. Are we counting any of those Mexican American veterans who lived south of the border that use the VA in El Paso? Because there is, I mean, I've seen dozens of license plates from Chihuahua, New Mexico. I mean, from Chihuahua, Mexico, south of the border. And I can't find any information online about how many of those veterans use that hospital or any of the clinics that live in Mexico. And I think we need to find out who those guys are, because they're deserving of those services if they served in our Army. And, you know, our citizens that choose to live down there for reasons of family or economics, or whatever the case may be, but I can't find any information on them. But I know because I've seen all their license plates there. So we need to also get that count going, or find out from the VA how many of those veterans live down there that would need that hospital. So this is a problem that every month I attend this Veterans Leadership Council as a representative of the Combat Veterans Motorcycle Association. And that's a question that always comes up, is why is Alamogordo orientated to Albuquerque so far away when we should be orientated to either El Paso or Las Cruces? And to be honest with you, with the population in El Paso, that is where the hospital is probably going to be, because you have to staff it. And that's where you're going to have people with those skills that can be doctors and nurses and technicians that live down there. So as much as we would like to see it in Chaparral or even in Las Cruces, a hospital, we know it's not going to happen there. So that's the question. It also goes across state lines, but you have a huge, if you go out 100 miles in diameter around El Paso, you probably find an enormous amount of veterans that live in this area that have to either go to Big Springs over in Midland, Texas for that hospital, or they have to go to Phoenix, or they have to go to Albuquerque. But yet we have this intersection of two states and one country, two countries, and we don't have a medical center that's worthy of being called a veterans hospital in this area of the country. And we really need to solve that problem. And again, I have talked to Ben about this at length, and he's interested in it. I haven't talking to Martin yet about it, but when I see him next time, I will, speak to him about this is a problem that goes across state lines, and we need and country lines, we need to solve it. So I just want to put it on your radar that it's something that's discussed more often than any other issue that veterans have.
I thank you for that, Mark. And again, I would Love
Yeah,
to
and thank
have a
you so
conversation
much,
with you.
Mark.
Just one more thing, Claudia, then I know you got to move on to the next thing. One of the purposes, again, for the Mission Act, which came out in 2018, was to address some of these overlaps that we have with other states. And I want to come back. I want to talk about the Mission Act in a little bit more detail, because there are a lot of veterans who don't know about the Mission Act and what it affords you as a veteran. It helps you receive urgent and emergent care in some of the areas that are harder to get to. We have relationships, or rather the VA has relationships with local hospitals and the healthcare clinics to help with some of these situations that veterans have when they can't get to the VA. So again, this thing really has to be unpacked, and we have to talk about it. So thank you so much.
And thank you. And let me ask, let's see, we've got Commissioner Reynolds has a question. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Secretary Smith. I have one other observation I'd just like to make about this discussion, and that is that with the last administration, there were a lot of veterans, or a lot of people who served, who were actually asked to move across the border because they didn't want to make them citizens. So we don't know the impact that the last administration had on the migration of veterans to the south of the border either. If you have that information or know how to get it, that would be helpful as well. Thank you.
If I could also address that in a bit.
Please.
That is a problem. I actually met with the Secretary of Veterans Affairs together with the Chair, Mark Decano, of the Veterans Committee in Congress on this. And we were really pushing the fact that they did get deported. And part of the reason they get deported is because they don't know. It's ridiculous, right? We have veterans who've served, who've put their lives on the line, who may have been injured, who are suffering from, illnesses that are tied to their services, and then they're getting deported. So we did meet. They are going through and trying to identify those who were improperly deported. But we also passed HR 1182, the Veteran Deportation Prevention Reform Act. I was a co-sponsor of that, pushed for it. And so that would prevent non-citizen veterans from being deported in the first place. It would bring them, those who are eligible, back, and also make sure that they let them know about this service, about this benefit that they're entitled to before they leave the service. That's the other area that we push the Secretary on, is they need to let and make sure that if somebody is still in the service immediately before becoming a veteran, that they get enrolled in all the programs that they are eligible for. That's another issue that the veterans have talked to me about as I've gone around the state, is that, they don't sign up in time and then they're not eligible. So it's, we don't want a gotcha, like veterans deserve what you've earned. You've earned this. And so we need to make sure that the VA signs you up for what you're eligible for, that the military signs you up for what you're eligible for before you get discharged, before you get a veteran, and that we remove these barriers to receiving their services because you didn't fill out this form or that form, or you missed it by a month. So that's something that we're also working on.
That is such an important point. And Pat Gaston, retired Lieutenant Colonel, who is the president of the Women Veterans of New Mexico, brought that up, that especially women don't understand that they are actually veterans. It's terrible. I'd like to turn it over to Sandy. We've got one more question in the chat, please, Sandy.
Sure, one more. This is from Jim Williams, and this is a question for the Congresswomen. And he says, for several election cycles, the Democratic Party has been losing Hispanic voters. Do we understand why that is, and what can this caucus do to stop this hemorrhage?
Okay, so, there are concerns, especially about our rural Hispano voters. I do know that I actually overperform myself among Hispano voters, but we need to make sure that we communicate what we are providing to our Hispano families or Hispano veterans. And I think that what's happened is that communication needs to be key, because we are the ones delivering. We're the ones who are fighting to keep the clinics open. We are fighting to make sure that we create jobs in their communities. We are fighting to actually honor, not just raise the flag, right? That's why I'm saying it's not enough to wave the flag and say we're patriotic. Patriotism includes providing you with the services you earn. It means actually delivering. And so we are out. I am out making sure we deliver. I am out hablando en español. Casi todos los que estaban en español y en Taos eran, la mayoría hablaban español. We went back and forth. I love the fact that the commander was actually referring to me as his hita, mi hita, right? And I think it's that reconnecting, that we are with you, we are of you, and we are for you, all of that we come from you, right? And I think that that's key, but making sure that they know that we are actually about delivering, and that's what we have done at the state level, and that's what we have done at the federal level. We are turning the tide. Remember, this whole air thing started in 2018. It started under Trump. Right. And now we're going to have to shut it down under Biden. Right. But that's an example of who is fighting for you and who is actually trying to cut costs and move that money to the most wealthiest. But we have to contextualize it. We need to tell the stories. We need people to understand that in their lives, we are making a difference, and we truly are.
Thank you so much. You're spot on. And I'd like to invite Congresswoman Stansberry, if you'd like to address Jim's question as well about Hispanics.
Yeah, so I'll provide a slightly more nerdy and less beautiful analysis. When you look at the data over the last several election cycles nationwide, we have seen a trend, especially of Latino, Hispano men voting more and more conservatively over time. And it's not necessarily party affiliation. A lot of Hispano men in particular are non-affiliated, or they might be Democrats but be voting more conservative. And I think there's a number of factors that are really important to understand. And first and foremost is this is not organic. The Republican Party, and especially under Trump, has targeted Latino Hispanic men across the United States for their messaging. It's part of their explicit political strategy. When you look at their briefing books for the 2022 election, they are targeting Hispanic men. That is part of the demographic block that they are targeting. So that means that every day, if you are a Latino in the United States, you're probably getting social media messages telling you that Republicans are the party of your values, of the economy, and all of those things. And part of why that is a target demographic is because through, the social science that they've used to look at messages around conservative values and family values and messages around the economy and jobs are especially resonant for that population. And so one of the things that as Democrats, and I think this is what Teresa, Representative Ledger Fernandez is really honing in on the answer side of the equation, is the Democrats have to get much more effective in being able to communicate clearly, effectively, and from the heart about our values and how we support families, we support, good paying jobs, how we're helping people in their communities to do well, and how we're reflecting those values. And I think that actually there's a wonderful analogy to the work that you guys are doing in the Veterans Caucus, because the Republican Party has put down a flag and is trying to claim military issues and veterans issues as their own. And in the same way, the Republican Party has been doing that progressively cycle after cycle, especially trying to sort of claim that demographic for themselves. The second point I want to make, and I think this is especially important in New Mexico, is that the Hispanic population of the United States is not a monolith. And one of the things that we saw in our special election, because it was a nationalized election and we had the Democratic, the DCCC come in offering to help us, especially with Hispanic voters, is that we had to explain that, yes, we have Spanish language speaking individuals who live in New Mexico who are of Latin American origin, but we are also, the border crossed us. So we have Hispano populations that have been here for hundreds of years. And I think that for the national political organizations and talking heads and consultants, they oftentimes don't drill down on the local context. And what we know here in New Mexico is exactly what Representative Ledger Fernandez said. We have to get out into our communities. We have to talk to people. And this doesn't matter what your, background and heritage and identity is. People want to look you in the eye. They want to know, are you for me? Are you going to have my best interests at heart when you make your decisions? Are you trustworthy, and are you fighting for our communities? So what can your caucus do? What can our caucuses do to help turn out and re-engage our Hispano populations in New Mexico? We have to go out and do that grassroots work. We have to go out and especially into our rural communities. And in our district, in the Albuquerque metro area, go into our communities and actually have those face-to-face conversations and talk about our values, talk about what we're fighting for, and for our candidates to make that to make those cases and to present yourselves in those ways so that people know that you're out there fighting for them. And at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. So those are my thoughts.
So I want to add just another little point to that. I agree with everything my hermana said. She is so tuned in to it all. But we also need a pushback that sometimes they are over, that we are going to need to push back in this election against apathy. We are going to have to push back against an idea that we are not excited, that we are not out moving on this. There were 7 million more Latinos that voted in this last election than before. And they voted for Democrats, right? There were some fall-offs in different parts, but in general, we need to claim and remember and remind everybody there was Latinos who won Ben Ray Lujan, his Senate seat in New Mexico, a closer race, right? Because they came out, overperformed on behalf of Ben Ray Lujan. Senator Lujan is there because of Latino votes. In Arizona, Senator Kerry is there because of Latino votes. President Biden is our president because of Latino votes that carried Arizona for him. Georgia, Latinos came out, and the extra amount that Latinos came out in Georgia helped win both Senate races and the president there. And it was also the case in our northern Wisconsin areas. Latinos came out in bigger numbers, and their increased turnout is why we have a Democrat Senate and a Democrat president. And we need to claim that and celebrate that, and not let them say, the Latinos don't care. It's like, yes, we do. Now, do we need to be aware of some of the drop off? Yes, and work on it. But let's claim and celebrate that Latinos helped us win that Senate and win that president. And we are going to do it again this election. I want to make sure that we all push back against anybody who wants to make sure they get us all. We can't do it in apathy and we don't turn out. We need to get energized. We need everybody in this listening here to talk to all of our other veterans about the fact that we're going to turn out big, and we're going to keep the House. And we have an opportunity to flip some Senate seats. So let's keep that enthusiasm rather than the doom and gloom about Democrats going with regards to Latinos, with regards to all of us, vets, rural areas. Let's do that. On the rural areas, I've been raising it with the president and with his top people at the White House, because I have my lovely, Democrats delivering for rural New Mexico. And the White House has now come out with what we're doing for rural America, that, I've been meeting with them and talking to them and giving them feedback. And so now we have a beautiful pamphlet from the White House on how this administration, this Congress has delivered for rural Americans and is doing it. And we need to do the same for veterans, because we are the ones who are delivering for veterans, pushing back against the cuts that the Republicans enforced against our VA.
You are exactly right. And thank you so much for what you're doing. I want to do a shout out to Evelyn. Are you still on board? Evelyn is the new chair of the Rural Caucus, Democratic Party of New Mexico. And she has been the driving force in recruiting a fabulous team, putting out an amazing newsletter, and really working closely with the Democratic Party of New Mexico in getting this up and running. And she may have stepped away, but I just have to sing her praises. She's really fantastic. So I don't think we have any more questions in the chat. Do we, Sandy?
We don't have any more.
And you've got 4 dogs nipping at your heels?
I kind of do.
So I have to get off now, but I did see the question by our wonderful Senator Pope about what we can do. And I think every kind of communication, the caucus writing a letter is good. Right now, until the commission actually gets up and running, we're sending our stuff to the Secretary for Veterans Affairs. And remember, send a copy to your delegation, because we are also, Representative Stansbury, myself, and the 2 senators. And remember this, the ones who are fighting is only the Democrat delegation. So send us that. And so pass that on to people. The other Republican member did not jump in. She might jump in later, but she hasn't jumped in now. We are leading the way on the veterans issues. And salut, Melanie. So I've got to go. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks so much, everyone. Representative Ledger Fernandez, Representative Stansbury, we appreciate your time so much. And I want to close, but I want to say the reason there are only 3 congressional representatives here is because we only invited 2. And next annual meeting, we're inviting 3 because CD2 is going blue. So we're going to have a full house here. We got Rochelle Williams, Sally Davis, and a ton of wonderful, talented, hardworking people working with Gabe and Dr. Patel, who are both going to primary. And with whoever wins that, we're going to flip that. It's going blue. And like I said, when I was talking about our legislative report card, if you don't want to know who's not there for veterans in our legislative house, it's all the representatives. That's the party of the military industrial complex. It is not the party of the people. Veterans are people. And the Democrats, we are here for the veterans. We're here for everybody. So let's remind everyone that we've got a primary coming up the 7th of June. Vote for your favorite Democrat. And even if your Democrat's unopposed, please vote. It really makes a difference to that person running. I know. And it gets the attention of the Republicans. And we want them knocked back on their heels because this state is red and we're going to get redder. So thank you, everybody. We really appreciate, I'm sorry, the state is blue. I'm red hot mad about this, and it's going to be all blue. So let's go and turn out. Let's get that vote out. I want to thank my team for putting this together. You are so fabulous. We haven't done this before. You can see there was a lot of turnover of the mic. Not as smooth as we thought, but I think pretty darn good. And I love the conversation and everybody joining. Congratulations again to our door prize winners. Those are not virtual prizes. They will be mailed real time to you by Amazon, and they will show up at your door or your neighbors. So keep your eye out for them. And I think that's it. If I've missed anything, Sandy, Ivan, please jump in. Thank you so very much. This was such an honor to have these wonderful people here. Thanks for sharing your Saturday afternoon. And we'll see you at our guest speaker series on the 20th of April, which is going to be the 2 Democrats running for CD2. So join us. We all know it's the 3rd Wednesday of each month, 5 o'clock on Zoom. We'll see you there. Thanks so much, folks.